The Seaside murders, 4 females from 3 generations in one family, 1977. On the morning on August 11, 1977, at Seaside, California, police officer kicked down the door to a small duplex and found 4 females spanning 3 generations of the Smith family dead from too many stab wounds to count. Looking into the kitchen, he could see Josephine Smith, the white-haired grandmother, lying dead next to her 27-year-old daughter, Susan Harris, who was lying dead next to her 6-year-old daughter, Rachel Harris. In the bedroom, Renee Ferguson, another 15-year-old Smith family granddaughter and niece to Susan, was found dead, lying across the bed with her hands tied behind her back. All 4 females had not been seen since attending church on Tuesday night, August 9. After the service, Grandma Smith promised the Assembly of God church pastor they would return the following evening for his evangelical seminar. They never came. It wasn't like Grandma Smith not to appear when she said she would. He thought about checking on them, but his attention was directed elsewhere. That Wednesday morning, both Susan Harris and Renee Ferguson were supposed to be at work. Susan at an electrical firm, and Renee to her summer job she had gotten through the Youth Job Corps. Neither one of them showed up, and Susan's car remained under the carport, exactly where it had been parked the night before. Later that Wednesday night, a friend of Renee's mother asked a neighbor acquainted with the family to check on them the following morning when he went to work. At 5:30 a.m. that Thursday, August 11, no one answered the front door, but as he was walking away, he noticed a light on in the bedroom, peered through the window, and saw Renee's face down on a blood-soaked bed with her hand tied behind her back. Approximately 10 minutes later, the officer was kicking down the door to the worst crime scene of his career. Inside the home, detectives found a house of human slaughter that looked like something out a low-budget teenage slasher film, the kind targeted for young people eager for an emotional thrill. An autopsy letter showed that each victim had been stabbed between 19 and 45 times. The wounds were made with a knife so long that almost all of them would have been fatal. Even with 3 victims lying clustered together on linoleum kitchen floor, every surface inside the small residence seems untouched by gore. They may have found a lot of blood, but it was what they didn't find that would cause the investigation to last far longer than anyone in the community could stomach. The windows and door were not broken. There didn't appear to be a struggle inside the home. None of the victims were sexually assaulted. Nothing valuable was taken from the home or from any of the victims. In short, there were no clues, no suspects, and no motive. But what they did have was a hell of a lot of blood, and down in that blood, they would later found footprints that were only visible in the crime scene photograph. After careful study, they concluded there was one large shoe print and another print, not as big, maybe a bare foot, but it was small. Who did that belong to? Rachel? Although inexperienced with investigating a house full of dead women, murdered by some movie theater monster with an unseen face, a long knife, and short temper, the Seaside police force used every resource available to them. Their investigation was thorough and professional. They did what they were supposed to do. They interviewed everybody that knew the family, twice. They interviewed 500 people before it was over. They searched for clues within a wide radius of the area. They investigated every tip and lead that came into a special hotline. They sent out bulletins and called in reinforcement from the State Bureau of Investigation. But when the crime wasn't solved fast enough, the fear of Seaside residents turned to anger and resentment against their own police force. Serving a community of just 23,000 people, they thought the force was too small for the kind of mass murder that should have happened somewhere else. After the bodies were discovered, they organized citizen brigades to patrol the streets on foot. Volunteers with CB radios cruised the back roads all night in their vehicles, talking to each other in official-sounding language about all clear this and suspicious-looking that. At the end of 3 weeks, they grew tired of playing cops and movie monster killers. Without a suspect in custody, the family members complained to the mayor and the media. Then the media started asking loaded questions about the investigation being led by just 3 detectives on the Seaside police force. The lack of trust by the public got so bad that the California Department of Justice had to investigate the investigation. Released on September 19, their evaluation asserted the performance of Seaside detective is complete and being conducted competently. It further stated that no involvement by the state DOJ was necessary. In short, the local police were doing their job and just needed a break in the case. The break in the case came from an anonymous 19-year-old girl who called into hotline to give them the name of the killer's new girlfriend. The caller was the ex-girlfriend, and she was calling about getting her replacement arrested. Her name was Terry Milligan, 14, and she was pregnant with the killer's baby. When they asked who he was, she scoffed out her surprise they weren't hip to who the killer was. She had to tell them his name was Harold Arnold Bignell, except she didn't pay it in a normal way. She spit it out of her mouth with sarcasm and ridicule wrapped around it. "And who is Harold Bignell?" the detective asked the caller. "You don't even know that," she snapped. "I thought you said you were a detective investigating those murders." Harold Bignell was the 19-year-old grandson of Josephine Smith, nephew to Suzanne, cousin to both Rachel and Rennie, and Harold Arnold Bignell, who sang in the church choir and volunteered for the Citizen Patrol for one day. The same Harold Bignell who joined the Navy 2 days after the murder, and the same Harold Bignell who had a 14-year-old girlfriend that replaced her. The girl on the telephone who was really calling to get her rival in trouble. The movie that had ended as a teenager slasher film began as a teenage love triangle or the plot. The detective who took the call investigated Harold Arnold Bignell by questioning his friends. Those who knew something talk. On October 26, Bignell was arrested at the San Diego Naval Training Center and brought back to Monterey County. He later made a partial confession to the crime on tape. His 14-year-old girlfriend, Terry Mary Milligan, was also arrested and charged as a juvenile for her involvement in the murders. In late November, another young girl, 15-year-old Karen Kirby, was arrested and charged with murder. The district attorney's office was hush-hush on Milligan and Kirby's exact involvement. All that was known about Kirby was that she was a friend to victim Rennie and her sister Raylene. She was also an acquaintance of Bignell and Milligan, but didn't know them that well. In February, investigators revealed they had a surprise witness who was in the duplex on the night of the murders. Not only were Milligan and her friend, Karen Kirby, there during the slaughters, but so was victim Rennie's sister, Raylene Ferguson. The mind is a funny thing, and Raylene's mind had broke out the trauma it witnessed that night. It was too much to process in minutes or hours or days. Instead, it was like a dream in which all the elements of her memory of the night were elusive. The present sense just around the next corner in her mind. Over time, her memory solidified the horrific moments of that night she saw, and by November, Raylan met with investigators and the district attorney to tell them what she remembered. That's when Karen Kirby was arrested. During a court hearing in February 1975, Raylan testified she was standing outside the kitchen when the attack started after Winnie and Bignell began arguing. "I heard screaming," she said, adding that she saw knives swinging and blood and was then struck on the back, on the head, and knocked unconscious. She also may have passed out and hit her head. She said she woke up the next morning in Karen Kirby's bedroom and told the 15-year-old girl she had a bad dream. She said, "I don't want to hear about it," Ferguson told the judge. Ferguson also testified she once tried to tell Bignell about the dream, and he agreed and said, "Yes, it does seem like a dream." From the witness stand, Bignell, talking in the third person because he had several personalities, stated that he killed for the noblest reason of all. "When I look back, I see that he was fighting to protect love," one of his personalities declared in court. Apparently, it was one of the good personalities because that one didn't like the other one. The step for members of his family over 100 times personality. "When I see how much damage I work, I abhor that man," the high school dropout said with some dramatic flair. Then, although he couldn't recall killing anyone when he first began to testify, one of his personalities later confessed to jurors that he killed the 3 youngest females. He thoroughly denied killing Grandma and blamed Karen Kirby and Terry Milligan. He would never have killed Grandma. "It had to have been the other girls," he said repeatedly. The jury also abhorred the short young man who had broke so many lives. He was found guilty on April 21. 1 month later, he was ordered to serve 4 life sentences to run concurrently, which really meant 1 life sentence, which didn't really mean his entire life because life without parole wasn't an option until the 1980s. And because it was the 1970s, when prison sentences were ridiculously lenient, his 4 consecutive life sentences meant that he would be eligible for parole in 7 years. Fortunately, the California Board of Parole Hearings didn't believe in lenient sentence for lovesick mass murderers. Harold Arnold Bignell is still serving his life sentence at Salinas Valley State Prison in Soledad. In June 1975, Terry Milligan was convicted in juvenile court of 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of second-degree murder. Karen Kirby was convicted of being an accessory, but found not guilty of murder. Just like their involvement in the murders that night, their sentences were not made public. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoy it and see you next time. God bless you.